been paying attention, we've been dealing in the United States with the Democratic Party in various states trying to break the seal of confession, forcing priests to tell whatever was confessed in the confessional if it pertains to certain issues related to being a mandatory reporter, where the safety of a child isn't concerned. Some people watching that say, yeah, that's a good idea. Well, a Catholic priest who violates the seal of confession is automatically excommunicated, ceases to be a priest, and ceases to be a Catholic. It's a big deal. The United States has honored this until fairly recently, where several states have tried to do this. Most recently, in the state of Washington, a bill was passed through the state legislature, spearheaded by an apostate, a former Catholic who left the faith, and signed into law by a, on paper, nominally Catholic governor of the state. They all cited the need to protect the most vulnerable, etc., etc. Immediately thereafter, the bishops of Washington took the state to court because, well, why wouldn't they? And this became a national and even international story. We got an update on this from LifeSite News. This is good news. Headline: Washington state will not enforce the law requiring priests to violate the seal of confession. Washington will no longer threaten priests with jail time and fines for upholding the seal of confession, the Alliance Defending Freedom announced today. Now, that's good news, but it's not as good news as it could be, because that headline leaves it open for them to change their mind. A better headline would have been, Washington state loses in court and is ordered to remand the law, to break down the law, and go back and try again without forcing priests and ministers to violate their rights. But that's where we are. Here's some details, because this was part of a court process. The state of Washington officially agreed to drop all attempts to enforce a law that threatened Catholic and Orthodox priests with jail time and fines for not violating the seal of confession. Senate Bill 5375 was the latest iteration of attempts by Democratic Senator Noel Frame to try to coerce priests and other religious officials to report penitents to law enforcement if they confessed alleged abuse. The violation of the seal of confession is an excommunicable offense in the Catholic Church. Both Frame and Liberal Democratic Governor Bob Ferguson cited their professed Catholic faith during their debate over the bill. However, the law has been permanently enjoined since the summer by the Western District Court of Washington, following a challenge brought by the Catholic bishops. Orthodox Church has brought a similar lawsuit against the law in the Eastern District Court of Washington. These lawsuits culminated in settlements announced today by Alliance Defending Freedom and the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, which permanently ends any enforcement action by the state and county prosecutors. Well, let's pause there. If they say they're not going to enforce it, it's not permanently ended. It means that they can come back and try again. What they need to do is pass a law to make their aims, because it's a laudable aim to protect the most young, but leave the religious people out of it. And yes, I recognize the church has a problem. I'm not blind. But you cannot, in a free society, expect a Catholic priest to choose between his soul and jail. Not if you're in a free society. Most men pay lip service, at least when they enter seminary, to the idea that they know that the time may come someday where they will have to make such a choice. But in a free society, they should not have to. So this is a good news law. They've agreed to not enforce the law, but that does always leave the door open. The law had faced an onslaught of legal pressure in addition to the two lawsuits. Similarly, the Federal Department of Justice asked to intervene in the case and announced an investigation into the state for passing the law. The Catholic bishops had made clear that they would not comply with the law. Throughout the debate on the law, which had gone through several different versions in the past few years, sponsors and supporters ignored numerous warnings about religious liberty problems from a Catholic bishop, Protestant ministers, and legal scholars. Legal scholar Jonathan Turley, a professor at George Washington University, criticized Democrats for, quote, adding a fifth stage for confessions under a new law and called the bill blatantly unconstitutional. Putting aside the obvious violation of the sanctity of the confessional, it presents a novel problem for priests if they both encourage the faithful to unburden themselves while at the same time reminding them anything that they say can and will be used against them in a court of law, he wrote on his personal commentary website. In my view, the law is facially unconstitutional as an attack on the free exercise of religion, Professor Turley, who is Catholic, wrote. He also noted that Canon 983 forbids breaking the seal of confession and explained how courts have traditionally protected religious practice. Citing the current catechism, quote, Given the delicacy and greatness of this ministry, and the respect due to the persons, the Church declares that every priest who hears confessions is bound under very severe penalties to keep absolute secrecy regarding the sins that his penitents have confessed to him. He can make no use of knowledge that confession gives him about penitents' lives. This secret, which admits of no exceptions, is called the sacramental seal because what the penitent has made known to the priest remains sealed by the sacrament. End quote. Nevertheless, Senator Frame ignored these warnings, instead deciding to berate Catholic Bishop Frank Schuster during one hearing. End quote. I wish I had the video of that to show it to you. This is what they think of you. She cited, Senator Frame did, her Catholic faith, but she made it clear in one of the press conferences that she stopped practicing the faith. She's an apostate. And even if she had decided to go back to Mass, but was still pushing that law, she'd still be an apostate. She's waging legal war on the Catholic Church. Pray for her. Her soul is in grave danger. But a law like this needs to be struck completely. Perhaps even the state of Washington needs to pass a law explicitly upholding the sealed confession. The privacy rights of religious leaders when working with their faithful. I'm sure, the legal minds are creative. They can come up with something that would be super inclusive of everything in our pluralistic society, so that a Baptist minister having some kind of private conversation with a layperson can enjoy those same protections, as well as what sacramental apostolic Christians of various different lineages can also have. I'm curious what you think about all this, so let me know in the comments. And I'm going to leave you with my favorite thing I've seen Father James Martin post in a long time. He decided to take trads to task, and he did so in his usual kind of distant way. He did it by honoring the opening of the anniversary of the opening of the Second Vatican Council, because it was like 63 years or something since the opening of the Second Vatican Council, when John the 23rd opened it. And at that opening, John the 23rd gave an address, an infamous address, one trads like to cite as evidence that this has been a problem for what we see in the church today is a very long time. And James Martin decided to take a little dig at traditional Catholics with this. This is from John the 23rd's address. In the daily exercise of our pastoral office, we sometimes have to listen, much to our regret, to voices of persons who, though burning with zeal, are not endowed with too much sense of discretion or measure. In these modern times, they can see nothing but prevarication and ruin. They say that our era, in comparison with past eras, is getting worse, and they behave as though they had learned nothing from history, which is, nonetheless, the teacher of life. They behave as though at the time of former councils everything was full of triumph for the Christian idea and life and for proper religious liberty. We feel we must disagree with those prophets of gloom. I'm going to pause here. James Martin butchered the quote. What he called us was prophets of doom. So, we'll continue. We must disagree with those prophets of doom who are always forecasting disaster as though the end of the world were at hand. In the present order of things, divine providence is leading us to a new order of human relations, which by men's own efforts and even beyond their very expectations are directed toward the fulfillment of God's superior and inscrutable designs, and everything, even human difference, leads to the greater good of the Church. From his opening address to the Second Vatican Council, and he posted this on the feast of John the 23rd, on the Novus Ordo calendar. And the thing about it is, we like to cite that address, too, to show how out of touch with reality the post-conciliar popes and even John the 23rd, who didn't make it to see the end of the council, but how out of touch with reality they've all been. Because it is objectively true that since 1962, things have gotten worse. You can go look at any statistic you like to look at, mass attendance, baptisms, marriages, all the rest of those, as well as, the number of how many homes have a father in them in the broader culture. Many people wait to engage in certain activities until they're married and only with their married person. And so on and so on and so on. Anything you care to look at, things have gotten objectively worse. But the real icing on the cake with that quote, it is widely believed that the prophets of doom that John the 23rd was addressing were the Fatima seers. Take all the time you need to understand the implications of that one. because Sister Lucia was still around, although had been mysteriously silenced already at that point, and had yet to reappear and cause all sorts of interesting speculation about her identity at that point. But nonetheless, she had been silenced in the 1950s by the Vatican. Take all the time you need to wrap your head around all of those details. But the prophets of doom remark was thought to be aimed at the Fatima seers and those who follow them. Curious, though, what you think about all this? So let me know your thoughts in the comments, please. So like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Go share this on social media. It helps a lot, too. Please pray for everybody we spoke about today. They need your prayers. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.